So let's start with something recent, and we'll talk about Kitridge, which was a 1950s Valley Ranch style house.
That one had a lot of color in it. The wall colors really helped me inform how I wanted to pull that together. It also had a touch of a mid-century vibe, and I do feel like buyers in that neighborhood are generally millennial buyers. It's probably going to be a family, someone starting a family. And so for me, kind of hitting that sort of boho mid-century is kind of a specific look that I think works well with that demographic, and then color palette wise worked really well in the house. They had just refinished the floors and they were beautiful. The original, I think they were oak.
Yes.
And so adding a lot of warmth. But then there was some, fun color that I don't normally get to work with. I'm often in like white walls, right? And so pulling in pieces that kind of fit the color palette through the house. So if you'll remember, there's an accent wall in the living room that's kind of an ochre yellow, which I also tied into the bedroom colors. So as we walk through the house, we kind of feel like all of that's really intentional. And then there's kind of like a warm lavendery blue in the kitchen. And so I tried to add touches of that through the house as well. So there's a bit more of a lavender blue in the primary. And then I let the ADU kind of be its own thing, because we kind of imagine that is a rental unit or a mother-in-law space. And so in terms of that being sort of different, I added a kind of a younger, young professional vibe, because that feels more like a space that could be a really great income property being rented out. And so just kind of pulling all those colors together, it came together nicely. The piano was definitely something that I had to work with. And so in that kind of sunroom at the back, pulling a dining table that felt like it fit six very nicely, but was still kind of narrow and a little bit more petite. And then I think the last kind of intentional choice was the chairs that I put at the other end of that kind of sunroom to the living room, so that it still felt like there was lots of seating in that space, but they are kind of an open wire wrap chair. So in terms of the light and the flow visually through that space, when you walk in, you see the front of a beautiful sofa, but then through that space, we didn't see the back of something else. We kind of see through it. Yeah.
That's 2 times now that you've done some seating areas that are opposite to, I think, traditional. They're reversed in a different direction. And then I go, oh, what a great spot to read a book and look outside.
Yes.
And I wouldn't have been able to say that if you had gone very traditional and put them like everybody else would.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have that.
I like getting to play with spaces, because the people can generally read a layout of a room, but sometimes they don't see what a room can be, and that's exactly what my brain does. I like to see what a room can be. And so getting to inform how to use spaces in a different way, it just gives even more information to potential buyers, and is exciting.
I think you brought the best out of that house. Lattice work is not an easy thing to work with.
No.
But that with the additions of the dining room table, things like that, I thought bistro, I felt European.
Yes.
Yes. And it really made that a very usable space.
Yeah, I really tried to address the lattice. I always feel like addressing something makes it not feel like an afterthought. And so I pulled those kind of white bamboo lamps. They're a similar color palette and a similar kind of like wickery feel to that lattice work. And so it's there. Someone's gonna have to deal with it. And so kind of still tying it in design-wise is a fun challenge.
Fantastic. All right, so we'll completely change things up, and we'll go to a sprawling mid-century Spanish hacienda.
Loved that house. It was beautiful.
So somebody that had obviously been there a long, long time.
Yep.
Had maybe done their decor a couple turns of the world ago.
The 90s.
Yeah. And you're coming in to make today's buyers want to buy this house.
Yes.
So how did you bring that together?
And incorporating a lot of what they had. And so that one was an Occupy where I was piecing in a lot of their furniture with a lot of my furniture. And they were really amenable to my suggestions. Some people are less so. And they were willing to work with what I could work with and kind of help get out of the house the things that were so specific that were going to be really, really hard to neutralize. And so they actually had some white sofas in the living room. They were a little bit of an older shape, but I felt like I could incorporate that into the rest of the house. And so we were able to use a lot of their upholstery, their mattresses, that sort of thing. And then again, it was really interesting because it was a hacienda style, but it was clearly built in the 60s mid-century ranch. So there were a lot of different kind of vibes as we walked through the house, right? And so trying to make that feel really cohesive, using the pieces that they already had, and then laying in my inventory over it to make a lot of sense. And so that front room, I think, was kind of the most important initial impact, and bringing in some pieces that were a little bit more mid-century. But then like the table that we brought, the chairs that we brought in around the table also had a little bit of mid-century, but were lighter in color and kind of softened the space a bit. But then they were full mid-century in their kind of vibe and furniture in that back family room.
Right.
So I really kind of like leaned into that with still kind of trying to incorporate a little bit of the Spanish style touches and like accessories and making it feel like the interior was cohesive with the exterior of the house. That one was a really fun one, but a challenge for sure.
And not only did you help us with the staging, but you took people who had been obviously there a long time and got them to declutter, do things beforehand that people don't, that wait to the end to do, and therefore it made their transition that much easier in the long run because you gave them like a worksheet of here's what to get rid of, here's what to pack,
yes,
here's what to store. Who knew that you made their lives so much easier because of that?
Yeah, I do try to be helpful with the scaling down. I think people have a misconception that like, oh, I'll just use all of my stuff to stage my house. But then it's all very personal and it does need to get decluttered and it does need to move at some point. And so starting that process early on, knowing what can be pieced in, because you still have to live there, you have to live there. But I do try to help kind of soften that. It's also really interesting, the emotional element of it,
yes,
of helping somebody, scale back the stuff in a home that they raise their children in. I'm often kind of stepping into a space that is delicate. And so I try to be kind and sensitive, but also forceful enough that we get it done. Because in the end, I've never had an occupied property client not love what we did and go, oh man, like now I don't want to leave and can I just take all of this stuff with me? Which is really satisfying. It also, that process helps the let go. Like I'm not a therapist, but sometimes I feel like I am, and just like helping people move on to the next phase.
We know what you mean.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
First of all, I've really enjoyed hanging out,
yeah,
having
me too.
a conversation. We don't get to do this.
No,
We're
we
always
don't.
working.
It's always gotta go.
So,
yeah.
and I have learned so much out of the last few minutes of talking to you, and little light bulbs have gone on all over the place. We consider you as a part of our team. You're as essential as our escrow companies and our lenders and things like that, and we can't thank you enough because you put in so much of yourself into every time we work together. I see, it's your heart and soul.
Yes.
And that's what I think makes us as successful as we are, because it's our heart and soul.
Yeah.
So it's nice to connect that way.
Yeah.
I think, we use you as a designer sounding board a lot. Call you with a question and things like that. Are you opposed to people reaching out to you and saying, hey, I've got a question about a color palette, or I've got a funny little corner, can I pick your brain?
Not at all. I like kind of getting to be a part of that process.
Awesome. Well, we will share how to get in touch with you and where they can find you on social media. Of course, you can always find her as part of our team.
Yes, indeed.
And again, so grateful for your time.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
My pleasure.